Welcome to another Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating piece of policy research titled Touring Home by Oluyomi Oladevid. In her work, she offers these incredibly profound insights into the massive structural shifts caused by the global pandemic. But, she goes way beyond the obvious headlines. Instead, her analysis breaks down how a complete halt in global movement impacted absolutely everything around us, from our daily package deliveries right down to life-or-death healthcare systems. Through her perspective, we're going to explore the surprising silver linings she uncovered when the globe hit pause, as well as the harsh, urgent wake-up calls she insists we literally can no longer afford to ignore.
Okay, let's dive into this. It's a question that completely redefined our modern era. What actually happens when the world just stops moving? When global lockdowns were initiated, the immediate shocking reality was total immobility. Flights were grounded, borders were slammed shut, and the constant, frenetic movement of people and resources simply froze in place. Oladevid uses this unprecedented standstill to ask a profound question. When humanity is forced to stay in one place, what instantly breaks down under the pressure? And surprisingly, what actually begins to thrive?
Well, as she points out, the immediate, devastating effect was a massive blow to the global tourism value chain. And we're not just talking about canceled leisure vacations or missing out on a summer trip. Think about these severe, compounding implications for income and employment worldwide. Entire economies that were built almost exclusively on tourism receipts, along with the local businesses producing goods and services catering directly to international travelers. They saw their primary revenue streams evaporate overnight. Her research highlights this intense economic domino effect as the very first major consequence of our sudden forced global immobility. And this brilliantly illustrates the first major silver lining uncovered in her research. While international travel fell off a cliff, there was this sudden massive boom in demand for local logistics and doorstep deliveries. Suddenly, our delivery drivers became our most vital link to the outside world. And, let's be honest, perhaps our most eagerly awaited daily visitors. Because households were grounded, people still desperately needed goods and services. So the energy, the money, and the intense focus that used to flow across oceans, it hyper-localized almost instantly, creating an absolute gold rush for local courier firms and delivery networks. The demand didn't disappear, right? It just radically changed direction. Expanding on those unexpected silver linings, her research highlights two other massive positive shifts that emerged as economies scrambled to adapt. First, the sharp drop in the frequency of international flights gave us a much-needed reduction in global emissions. Top tourist destinations that are usually completely overwhelmed by constant foot traffic and smog, they finally had a chance to breathe and recover environmentally. Second, as local tourism providers tried to survive, they were forced to innovate. Working within strict health guidelines, they began creating bespoke, customized vacation options specifically designed for local residents, basically encouraging people to explore their own backyards. Which brings us to this wonderful quote directly from her article. After all, there is no other place sweet like home. Oluyomi Oladevid uses this simple, really affectionate phrase to beautifully summarize this necessary pivot toward domestic tourism. When we were forced to look inward, many of us actually rediscovered the value, the beauty, and the utility of our immediate environments. It was an enforced reset. Suddenly, communities began to genuinely appreciate the destinations, parks, and hospitality services available right where they live, channeling their spending straight back into their own local economies. But here is where her analysis takes a really sharp, critical turn. It's one thing to miss out on an international leisure trip, or have to figure out a staycation in your own city. But what happens when you can't travel for survival? The narrative expertly shifts away from the economics of vacations and directly into the life-or-death stakes of healthcare. It's a sobering pivot, maintaining her core theme of immobility, but it forces us to consider the darker, far more dangerous side of a completely closed-off world. To really understand the gravity of this, let's look at the concept of medical tours. In many developing nations, limited access to basic and advanced healthcare infrastructure is a stark, everyday reality. Because of this systemic lack, elites in the upper income classes have grown entirely accustomed to just bypassing their local medical systems altogether. Instead, they opt for medical tours, flying out to advanced countries to get the specialized care they need. They rely heavily on global mobility and the convenience of international flights to guarantee their personal health and safety. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the pandemic completely neutralized that specific privilege of the elite. Think about the strict 10 to 14-day isolation and quarantine periods that countries suddenly slammed into place at their borders. If you are facing a severe medical emergency, you absolutely do not have 14 days to sit in a hotel room before seeing a doctor. Because of these hard barriers, medical tourism became functionally impossible and highly risky, if not entirely lethal. The global escape hatch that the wealthy relied upon was officially closed, trapping everyone within their local systems. Let's move to and see how this builds into an even larger systemic vulnerability identified in her research, the brain drain pathway. While the elites traditionally fly out for care, local healthcare systems are actively losing their best people. Why does this happen? Well, it's essentially a two-step drain. First, poor working conditions and a low value placed on human capital locally drive talent away. Second, bright, talented medical practitioners are actively wooed overseas to pro-immigrant countries like Canada. So the local system is left completely starved of both elite financial investment and the actual medical talent needed to run it. This leads directly to her central thesis, which serves as a massive wake-up call for developing nations. The pandemic proved definitively that you cannot always rely on an airplane to save your life. Therefore, urgent and pertinent investments are needed right now to develop local healthcare capacity. Relying on global travel for essential health services is a highly dangerous trap. Her research exposes that building robust domestic medical infrastructure isn't just some nice long-term policy goal. It is an absolute urgent necessity for basic survival when the borders close. So the crucial point is captured perfectly in her own powerful metaphor. Human capital is the oil in the wheels of domestic economic growth and development. You simply cannot build these essential local systems without truly valuing your people first. If developing nations want to survive the next inevitable global shock, her research insists they must retain, protect, and heavily invest in their brightest minds. Those medical professionals are the essential fuel required for any resilient, functioning local infrastructure. She ends her policy brief with a genuine, heartfelt rallying cry. Let us work to build local, sustainable healthcare systems for all. Yes, we can. This isn't just pitched as a temporary, panic-induced fix for a global pandemic. She sees it as the ultimate long-term solution to the profound systemic vulnerabilities that lockdowns laid completely bare. It's an optimistic but highly practical call to action, demanding that societies permanently shift their focus from global dependency to rugged, local resilience. Which leaves us with a critical question to ponder based on her profound insights. How robust is your local infrastructure when the world stops? Oluyomi Oladevid's work shows us that when the chips are down, the vast global networks we often take for granted can vanish in an absolute instant. Whether it's the local delivery of your basic household goods or the domestic hospital bed that might save your life, true resilience always starts at home. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really encourage you to take a closer look at the systems operating right outside your front door.